Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon once again. We're joined now by student athletes from the University of Iowa. The student athletes that are not joining us here in the main interview room are available right now in the Iowa locker room. That's for the next 30 minutes. In 15 minutes, head coach Fran McCaffery will join us down here. If you have a question for student athletes from Iowa, please raise your hand. Patrick and Erica have the microphones. We'll send the microphone to you. Please identify yourself by name and media outlet, and then we'll take your questions. The first question is coming up for Ryan, just to the left of the aisle.
Ryan Lazar, New York Post. Hey, Jared. You guys started off the year really strong, and in the middle of February, things started to change. What happened, and how do you hit the reset button entering this tournament?
You know, we started off we lost a couple early games in the tournament, and the tournament we went to down in Florida. And I think that really woke us up, and we really had a strong middle of the season. And towards the end, I think the Big Ten season really started to wear on us. Day in and day out, you're playing great teams. It's not like you're playing poor competition. So losing to those good teams, I think, is a good learning experience for us, and I think we'll bounce back from it in this tournament.
Next question for the student athletes from Iowa is on the right side.
This question is for Mike. This is Scott Dochterman, Cedar Rapids Gazette. Mike, when you see Josh Brown, who you're going to pose for most of the game on Friday, he's got similar numbers to you, an assisted turnover, takes care of the ball. What other things do you see about him, and how difficult of a matchup does he present for you?
You know, he's a guy that, you know, he's out there running their team. And, you know, I think it's a great matchup for me. It'll be a fun matchup. He's going to be out there pretty much the whole game. And, you know, he's a very good player.
Next question for student athletes from Iowa. Let's go back to Ryan up front.
You guys are all seniors. This is your third straight NCAA tournament. What can you take from previous lessons in this tournament and take them into this year?
We're going to go right down the line, beginning with Anthony, then Jared, then Adam, then Mike.
I mean, with the experience with this tournament, you have to, you know, come out and bring it and give it your all. You know, every second, you know, every possession counts. There's not a possession you have to take off, and you know, anything can happen in March and in these tournaments. So just by knowing that and understanding the process that we've been through, we just gotta bring our A game.
Jared.
We've all experienced losing our last game of the year, and I think that's the biggest motivation for us. You know, we haven't won this tournament, we haven't won the Big Ten tournament, and I think you learn from that you lose, you're done, and I think that's the biggest lesson we've learned.
I think the biggest thing is that there's no tomorrow. It's a do-or-die situation, so we all want to go out on top in our careers and leave a lasting legacy at the University of Iowa, so this is our last chance to do so.
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much hit it on the head. You know, if you're not excited to play in the NCAA tournament, there's something wrong with you. So we're really excited for this opportunity.
Next question's on the right side in the front.
Mark Narducci, the Philadelphia Inquirer. Jared, what about that you see from Temple? What is it that impresses you the most?
From us watching film with them, you know, obviously we don't get much interaction with them. They're a different conference, but from watching them on film, you know, I've been impressed with the tempo and how they try to dictate the tempo. You know, they don't panic. They play within themselves, and they try to. They make you beat them. Yes.
Next question for the student athletes from Iowa. Just raise your hand. Any further questions? There's one. Right in the middle to the left of the aisle.
You talked about how Temple makes you beat them. Neither you nor Temple turn the ball over. I think both of you guys are in the top 20 in the country in turnovers per game. Do you prefer when a team tries to make you guys turn the ball over or stays back?
Jared, you can take that.
That's tough. I don't really prefer either one. It doesn't matter to me. We line up and play against whoever's in front of us. So.
Continuing with questions for the student athletes from Iowa, if there are any. There's one in the back left. Roger.
Roger Rubin from Newsday. Jared, you were talking about the the trends of the season and the downturn in the arc at the end, playing the Big Ten schedule, I think you used the phrase wore down. Is there a fatigue factor in play here for Iowa?
Not right now. You know, when you're in the middle of the Big Ten season, that's a different situation. You know, you have a game every 3 days or whatever the case may be. You know, right now we're recharged. We're ready to go. You know, a season is a series of peaks and valleys. You know, you peak at times, and at times you go through rough patches, and you learn from each experience. And I think we're primed and ready to go.
Any further questions for the student athletes from Iowa? If you have a question, just raise your hand. With no more questions, we'd like to thank Anthony and Jared and Adam and Mike for joining us down here in the main interview room. They're going to head back to the locker room and join the rest of their student athletes. They're available until 2:05 p.m. in the locker room. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we're joined right now in the main interview room by Iowa head coach Fran McCaffery. The student athletes are available for 15 more minutes in the locker room. Coach McCaffery will join us right now. We'll ask Coach to make an opening statement, then we'll take questions.
We're just thrilled to have the opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament, represent the Big Ten. We have a team that I think this year performed extremely well. We've got an experienced starting five and a young group that came together behind them. We're playing a terrific Temple team with a fabulous coach in Fran Dunphy, and we're looking forward to the opportunity.
If you have a question for Coach McCaffery, please raise your hand. One of our microphone attendants will make his or her way in your direction. And we'll start the first question with Hall of Fame Associated Press writer Jim O'Connell.
Hey, Fran. Talking to the team before about the way the season ended, Jared said you could attribute it to the wear and tear of the Big Ten season. Do you agree with that, or do you have another explanation for it?
Well, I think that's as good an explanation as any. I mean, you look at the scores, our losses were very close games, a couple possessions here or there. You get to a point where, you know, teams scout you and you play them for the second time, you know, sometimes. We also were in first place for part of that time, so, you know, teams were coming after us pretty good. But I'm a little more pragmatic, when I look at it. Pretty much lost to good teams. You know, okay, we lost to some teams that we were probably supposed to beat on paper, but, you know, you lose on the road at Penn State. You know, Malcolm Hill hits a big-time step-back jumper, and you lose a 2-point game, you know, against Illinois. I mean, those are things that happen in the Big Ten.
Next question up front to the right, Howard.
Hi, Coach. Howard Megdal with Vice Sports. You spoke about your counterpart on the sidelines tomorrow. Curious, you know, as someone who's social with him as well, if there's a Fran Dunphy story that sort of stands out in your mind when you think of him, and if you could just speak a little bit about how you view his legacy just as a coach.
You know, I don't know if there's any one story. I mean, I've known Fran Dunphy for a very long time. I mean, I played against teams that he coached in high school. You know, he coached at my alma mater. I mean, obviously, his legacy there is, you know, to the point where they could put his name on the court. You know, I was happy to see him get the opportunity to move over and coach Temple. It's been a great experience for him. But, you know, you look at his record. I mean, he's averaged, I guess, 21 wins for a very long period of time. It's really hard to do. And he's been able to do it in the city that he loves, where he grew up and where he lives. His teams consistently perform a certain way. You know, they don't beat themselves. They take care of the basketball. They rebound the basketball. They move the ball. They share the ball. All the things that, as a coach, you want your team to do. And so, it's, you know, it's really not a surprise that they consistently win wherever he's coaching.
Next question's on the left side in the front.
Hi, Coach. Jesse Spector from Sporting News. Just going back to Lehigh, first time that you were in the tournament and through today, what's changed about the tournament and what has changed about your preparation for the tournament?
You know, I don't know how much has changed with regard to the tournament. You know, for us, it was a different experience. You know, in '85, I was an assistant. We went to the tournament for the first time at Lehigh. That was a big deal. You can only imagine what that was like on our campus. But the nucleus of that team went back again in '88, and we played the #1 team in the country at that time, which was Temple. So that was an experience. I mean, literally, they were the 1 seed, we were the 64. So that was a challenge in a big way. I think if you look at the growth and how this tournament has evolved, I mean, the interest level just continues to grow. But, we had, in '88, we had Selection Sunday. It was a big deal. You had, everybody watched, and you didn't know where you were going to go. You were thrilled to have the opportunity to be in it. You felt like if you were in it, you had a chance to win. We played very well that day, lost to a really good team. So, I look at it like this, there's no such thing as an upset once you get to this tournament because you won your way here, one way or another. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Next question's all the way to the back.
Hi, Fran. Mike Kern, Philadelphia Daily News. Could you just talk a little bit about the bond that Philly guys, the unique bond that Philly guys seem to have? And also, Fran said he thinks it's amazing that you've both been in the profession so long and have never crossed paths before.
Well, you understand it probably as well as anybody and could probably explain it better than I could. But, if you grew up there, you competed against each other somewhere. In those days, it was the Sunny Hill League, it was the Barbarian League, whatever, the Catholic schools, the public schools, the Conshohocken tournament. There's a family feel there. And everybody that kind of came up that way looks out for each other. We spend time with each other at the Final Four. And it's gone on for years and years. I have coached against Dump before. I coached against him, when I was at Siena. We lost to them in the Palestra, and I coached against them again at Siena. We lost at their place in Rob Kennedy's Christmas tournament. So I've coached against them. I've watched his teams. Dave Duke, his assistant was my assistant at Lehigh when we played Temple in '88. So there's a lot of camaraderie there. Dave's, a dear friend. So it's interesting that we would end up here, with Temple and Villanova as well, because Jay Wright's another guy that I have tremendous respect for and have known, since we were kids. And so there's a mutual respect, but also understanding on that day we're going to try to beat each other up, and then we're going to be best friends, when the game's over.
Next question's all the way in the front.
Yeah, Bob Groats, Delaware County Daily Times. Good to
Bob,
see you,
see you.
Franny. Okay, you have the reputation as kind of a fiery guy during the games and that. And I was talking to Dave Duke, and he mentioned that one of his jobs was just to make sure that you stayed.
I had to watch out for him too, Bob. Dave could get a little cantankerous himself.
How do you? I mean, is that a product of just your competitiveness? Do you think, or is that like the old players having been a player and players coach type of thing?
I think there's only one way to play the game. Okay, you got to compete, and I think I will be honest. I think sometimes I'm unfairly categorized as a guy that's constantly fiery. If you watch me coach, about 85% of the time, I just have my arms folded and I just watch the game. What will upset me is if we have repeatedly gone over something and then that aspect breaks down. So in other words, if you play for me, I'm not going to ask you to do what you can't do. But if I ask you to do a certain thing and you don't do it, and I know you can do it, that's going to be a problem. We're going to have an issue there. So I'm not the kind of guy who's constantly yelling and constantly griping and, you shoot the ball and I tell you should have drove the ball. You drove the ball, you should have passed the ball. I'm not that guy. I'm not in your face. I get out of your way and I let you play. But when we have a game plan and there's a certain expectation, how we're going to defend ball screens, what we're going to do in transition defense, how we're going to play a certain guy in the post. Well, I expect you to do that to the best of your ability because I know you can do it, and that's why I have you in that position. So I don't think it's any different than any other coach in terms of, holding your players accountable at the appropriate time and not being unreasonable.
On the right side in the front.
Fran, Mark Narducci of the Philadelphia Inquirer. I actually have two things. One is, could you tell me what you've seen of Temple, and especially a guy like Obi Anchinonia, who's 6'9" and can sort of like a stretch four and can really shoot it from the three-point area?
Well, I've been really impressed with Temple's team because I watched a lot of games, as you can imagine, in the last couple of days. And they play a unique style in terms of they're never rushed. There's never any panic in anything that they do. And one of, I think, Dump's greatest characteristics, he gets those guys to play with supreme confidence. So whether they're the primary point guard or whether they're a wing scorer or whether they're a post-up player, those guys accept their roles and they go out and they try to do it to the best of their ability. Now, Obi, he can win a game all by himself. He gets going, and you don't find him in transition or you lose him on a pick and pop. But he's not just a standstill shooter. He can go off the dribble a little bit. He can post up a little bit with his size. So, create some problems for you in terms of switching and things like that. But, you watch that team play, and we always go back to the same thing. They don't throw it away. So you're going to have to guard them when they come down the floor and stop them from scoring and rebound the ball. Because then you got Bond, who's as good offensive rebounder as there is.
To coach Jared and just to be around him and just
coaching,
see his development.
Coaching Jared is a unique experience in and of itself because he's a different kind of person, and I mean that in a very good way. He's very casual in some of the things he does. He doesn't get uptight. He's a fun-loving guy. His teammates love him. He plays relaxed, yet at the same time, he's a competitor. He'll make big shots. He'll take big shots. He'll carry our team. But the thing that I love about him is here's a guy who's as good an offensive player in terms of overall repertoire that there is in the game right now. But he might be a better defender than he is a scorer. He's all-league defense, led our league in block shots. A.J. Hammonds was the defensive player of the year, and he had fewer block shots than our forward did. And he can move his feet and guard a 2, he can guard a 3, he can guard a 4. And I think that's what I love. I love how complete his game is. And I just let him go. We give him the scouting report. Occasionally we'll have a conversation, but he's very professional in everything he does.
On the left side, Jason.
Jason Greenberg with ESPN, and just alluding to Jared, letting him go. That Iowa State game, I think it was 30 points in the first half, and then Peter Jock in the Big Ten tournament. You're a balanced scoring team, but on any given night, one player can have 30-plus points in the first half, and your coaching philosophy, I guess, with that, if you're in a good position tomorrow where somebody is on that hot streak.
When you have a guy like Jared, not one time in the time that I've coached him for 3 years, have I said, okay, that's a bad shot. Don't shoot that shot. And you have watched him. He's pulled up from, say, well, he pulls up from 30. Well, he will pull up from 30 and shoot the ball. And he's made some and he's missed some. He had one, it didn't come very close. But he didn't look over and say, hey, is coach going to be upset with me now? No, he knows. You have the green light to shoot the ball, wherever and whenever you want to shoot the ball. Early in the clock, late in the clock, late in the game. I'm not going to say a word to you. And I want him to have that kind of, I want him to know that I have that kind of confidence in him, because ultimately then I want him to have that kind of confidence in himself.
Any further questions for Coach McCaffery? There's one in the back left. Roger?
Roger Rubin from Newsday. During this last stretch, the 6 losses in 8 games, whatever it was that was the problem for your team in that stretch, do you think it's been addressed? Is it still a concern, whatever was nagging
I think anytime you lose, you're going to be concerned. Okay, what are I think part of your question was, okay, what was the cause? It's never one thing, okay? You look at a couple of those games, we had more turnovers than assists. Okay, well then you can look at, okay, that was the problem in that game. Where was the rebounding in that game? What were the shooting percentages? What kind of production did we get off the bench? Did we do a good job defending their key personnel? Did we do a good job defending the things that they like to do, whether it be set plays, transition, and you got to put it all together. And that's the thing as a coach, when you lose a 2-possession game, essentially, Indiana came into our building late in the season with a chance to win the regular season championship. If we won, we would still be in contention for the league championship. And we have the last shot of the game down 3, and it's in and out by our best 3-point shooter. So that's how close we are. So, it's not panic city by any means, but it's basically what our job is to coach and figure out how can we make 3 or 4 adjustments, 5 or 6 adjustments that will help us win a close game rather than lose a close game.
Is there a final question for Coach McCaffery? In the back? On the right.
Coach Ryan Fannin with Villanova Radio. Coach, if you could just maybe talk about the 2 Michigan State wins, the 2 Purdue wins, and what you guys did in those 4 victories, and maybe add your overall 2 or 3 biggest strengths collectively of your team throughout the year.
Well, the first Michigan State win, they were ranked number 1. Valentine didn't play, so nobody really paid much attention to that one on a national level. Although I will say that I think we played about as perfect a game as you can play defensively, and that enabled us to really get clicking offensively. Now, when we went up there to beat him, we got some attention because he was back, and then we beat him, I think, by 17 up there. We shot it well, we moved it well, we defended well, and I think we defended the way you need to defend to beat good teams. The Purdue games were different. I mean, we go on the road, we're down 19 in the first half at Purdue, packed house, place is going crazy. We pressed them, we didn't panic, we came back and won the game. They came back to our place, they got a lead, we came back and won that game. So we played very well in both of those games. So I think all 4 of those games that you were referring to are indications of how we're capable of playing against really good teams. So when you play defense, take care of the ball, move the ball, get good shots, and get production off from a variety of different people, if that happens for any team, especially this time of year, you got a pretty good chance to win.
We'd like to thank Coach McCaffery for joining us. Wish him luck tomorrow evening. Tomorrow day or tomorrow evening? Tomorrow afternoon. Thanks, Coach. We'll be right back here at 3:45 with West Virginia, 4:30 with Notre Dame, 5:15 with Stephen F. Austin, and 6 p.m. with the University of Michigan.